Hello everyone and welcome to Sipz and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be doing my Austin, Texas book haul. So a couple weeks ago I had the opportunity to visit Austin for the Texas Book Festival. I had an amazing time. Not only did I get to meet one of my all-time favorite authors, Amor Towles, who was promoting his latest book, The Lincoln Highway, which is fantastic by the way, but I also had the opportunity to visit one of the best bookstores in America, and that is the Book People, located in downtown Austin. So grab your favorite beverage as I discuss all the books that I bought in Austin. So the Texas Book Festival has been going on for many years. It's one of the most famous book festivals in America. This year it was kind of a subdued affair because it was a hybrid festival, so it was half online and then half in person. And I was just excited to go because it does feel like the book community is coming back a little bit. I was really excited to meet my favorite author, Amor Towles, and the discussion that he had about this book, The Lincoln Highway, and then some of his other books like A Gentleman in Moscow and Rules of Civility, was really, really interesting. Amor Towles, as I expected, was super smart, very intelligent. I really enjoyed that book discussion. And again, it did feel like the book world was coming alive a little bit. It just felt really nice to be there, surrounded by other bookish people. Unfortunately, the events were mostly at the Austin Public Library, and I am just not cool enough to film in the library quite yet. I'm not quite there as a booktuber, so I will link the Texas Book Festival's website below in case you'd like to check it out. I'm sure there are a bunch of links to the event with Amor Towles and some of the other authors that were there as well. I am really enjoying The Lincoln Highway so far. I'm about 150 pages to the end, but it is amazing so far. I just think we have another winner on our hands. Another 5-star read is what I anticipate giving this book. I loved it. It really redeemed for me On the Road by Jack Kerouac, which I read earlier this year and I hated. Here again we have another road trip story. So when I heard that Amor Towles was writing this book about a bunch of boys on a road trip across America, I was like, oh no, what's he doing? I just don't want another Jack Kerouac situation on my hands. But you know you can trust a writer like Amor Towles because this is a fantastic story. It talks about a boy named Emmett Watson, and he has recently got out of an all-boys prison or camp, and he returns home to Nebraska after his father's funeral to pick up his brother, Billy, who is 8 years old, and the two of them are going to take their car and drive it to California and just start a new life afresh. But plans change when two of Emmett's friends, Wooly and Duchess, they basically steal Emmett's car and drive it in the opposite direction on the Lincoln Highway to New York City. Fantastic story. I am really enjoying it so far. And Towles kind of does something different in this one, and he tells it from multiple perspectives. So every chapter is from one of the characters' perspectives, including, of course, Emmett, and then my favorite character, I think a lot of people's favorite character, Duchess. He is hilarious. Wooly, of course. Wooly is really interesting because he comes from a very wealthy New England family, but he himself is a little slower. So I'm just kind of curious to see what happens to Wooly in the end. Love his character. And then of course Billy the little boy is just epic. Billy is fascinated with adventure stories and travel writing, so he has this little red book full of stories about Odysseus, about Moby Dick, about Count of Monte Cristo. So Billy is really excited to go on this road trip across America. And in fact, that's what this story is. It's kind of that epic hero's journey, that type of thing. I think that's where Towles was going with this one. I am loving it so far and I can't recommend it highly enough. I really enjoyed Amor Towles' discussion at the book festival. Not only was it fun to meet him and I got really shy and giggly, as I tend to do with famous authors, but just his discussion in general with the group was amazing. He is a very, very intelligent, super smart, so interesting. And I'm not sure many people know this, but Amor Towles used to be in finance. He used to work on Wall Street. And so I don't know why he just left that high-powered career and decided to become a writer, but I think he did the right thing because he is a fantastic writer. I kind of feel like he's our generation's F. Scott Fitzgerald or something like that. Really, really enjoyed that discussion. He said to think of his writing like a stage play. So the history is kind of like the backdrop of the stage of the story. And then the plot itself, he said, think of the plot like the props on a stage, like the tables and the chairs and things like that. But what he is really interested in is the nitty-gritty details, the everyday details of just what the characters are doing in that moment, what they're thinking about, the conversations that they're having with each other. He said that's what he likes to write about, like in the present moment. So that really made sense to me when he described it, because that's exactly how he writes his books. And I am just loving this one, and I fully anticipate giving this one 5 stars. The next author that I met at the book festival was David Bowles, author of My Two Border Towns, illustrated by Erika, Meza. This, of course, is a children's picture book. It's really beautiful, guys. I could not resist this one. It tells a story of a little boy and his father who live in Texas on the border of Mexico. And every week they cross the border, they go through the checkpoints to visit their family and friends in this town across in Mexico. And when they come back, it's very poignant because they like to deliver medicine and food and supplies to all of the refugees who are stuck at the border. So this one is very timely right now. Even as an adult, I can't fully comprehend what's going on down there at the border, so it's especially difficult to explain this situation to children, and I think that David Bowles did a fantastic job of doing that. Also, Erika Meza's illustrations are so beautiful, so stunning, her watercolor illustrations. And what David did at the festival was he read this story in Spanish to all of the children that were there, and it was really interesting because, of course, there were Spanish children in the audience, but there were also a lot of English-speaking children, native English speakers, and you could tell that they were confused at first, but just the way that David told the story and he showed the pictures and how animated he was, the kids, even the English-speaking kids, they really perked up and you could tell they were enjoying themselves, even though they didn't completely understand the language. So that just teaches us how adaptable kids are to these types of cultural situations. They really understand things a lot easier and quicker than us as adults. But here are some of Erika Meza's beautiful watercolor illustrations. I just thought they were so stunning. I could not wait to share this with some young friends of mine or gift this to a fellow school teacher. Such a beautiful book, and it deserves to be in the classroom. And here is one of my favorite pictures where they are visiting his abuela and having lunch. And here is the poignant scene at the end where the little boy and his father are delivering supplies to the refugees. I love this picture because it points out the obvious that the refugees are not just adults. There are a lot of children stuck at the border as well. Love this one. Cannot recommend this highly enough for parents and teachers. I hope that you check it out for your kids. So the most famous bookstore in Austin is called Book People. They were actually one of the sponsors of the event, the Texas Book Festival. So they were there at the event selling Amor Towles' book, selling On the Border. But I also knew that I had to head on down to their flagship store and kind of check out the bookstore itself. And of course, I picked up quite a few books at the store itself. But it is just a beautiful store. And unlike the Austin Public Library, they were totally fine with me filming in there. They were very courteous, very friendly. They knew, of course, that I was probably there for the festival. The staff could not have been any nicer. It is a gorgeous bookstore, so I will show you some close-up shots of the exterior and the interior. One of the ironic things about the Book People is that it is literally right across the street from Whole Foods' headquarters. So many of you may not know that Whole Foods is actually based in Austin, Texas, and I just kind of found that ironic because, as you know, Whole Foods is owned by Amazon. So the fact that Amazon owns this shopping center where Book People is, I thought that was a little interesting and very ironic. But the store itself is absolutely beautiful. As you walk in, it has a very open floor plan. There are a lot of coffee table books and picture books up front and center. And then there is a beautiful stationery section and then a section dedicated to Texan authors and books about Texas. And then as you walk towards the back of the first floor, it is all dedicated to fiction. They had a huge table full of the authors that were at the Texas Book Festival. Some of them that were only there online, like Colson Whitehead and the Harlem Shuffle. And then it had a beautiful classics section. So as you know, I love classics, so I was kind of stuck in that classics section for quite a while. And the reason I love these iconic bookstores is they just have so many really cool editions, and that classic section was amazing. If my suitcase had been a little bigger, I probably would have bought more books from that section. They had a beautiful children's department, one of the nicest children's departments I have ever seen. So towards the middle, it was mainly middle grade, and then on one side of the store, it was all the children's picture books, and then the opposite side of the store, it was all the YA section. Again, just really fancy special editions I have never seen before, and a lot of those bookseller cards just describing all the books that the booksellers were recommending. I loved it. A lot of, I noticed too, like hand-signed editions, so book people must get a lot of author signed copies because it seemed like every other book in that department was signed by the author. So I thought that was a unique feature of book people as well. But I did get kind of stuck in the children's classics section, so most of the books that I bought were from that section. So let's check it out. So first, of course, I bought a Fixin' to Read It bookmark all about all things Texas, like barbecue and cows and guitars and boots and that type of thing. Thought that was a cute bookmark to have. The first book that I bought in the children's department was this really special chocolate cake edition of Matilda. I had never seen this before. It must have just came out recently. I thought it was adorable. It's also a scratch and sniff edition, so if you scratch in the corner there, yes, it does smell a little bit like chocolate. A lot of those elementary school memories are coming back to me. Scratch and sniff. And then in the corner, of course, is Bruce Bogtrotter, who is making his way through the Chunchbull's chocolate cake. I love this edition, and of course, Roald Dahl is one of my all-time favorite authors. The next book that I picked up in the classics section of children's classics was The House Without Windows by Barbara Newhall Folett. This one, I have never heard of this book before until I saw it at the Book People, and again, they had a lot of very unique, different books that I've never seen before. And I guess this one was out of print for a long, long time, and then Penguin recently republished it, and then this author, Jackie Morris, illustrated it with these beautiful watercolor illustrations. But I guess this was written in the 1920s apparently, and the author herself, Barbara Newhall Folett, was a child at the time when she wrote this, so she was only 12 years old when she wrote this book. I'm not exactly sure what it's about. I think it's about a little girl who is wild at heart. She does not want to live locked up behind the walls of a house, so she runs away, first to the meadow, then to the sea, and finally to the mountains. So I'm really looking forward to this. Maybe during my spring TBR, I will check it out, but I could not resist this one. And again, so many unique things at Book People. And the last book that I bought in the children's department in the classics section was one I was so excited to find. This last month I read Bedknobs and Broomsticks by Mary Norton, and I loved it for my Witchy Reads video. And so I knew I had to go back and read The Borrowers, which is her most famous book series. And I just really enjoy Mary Norton's writing now. It's very nostalgic, very whimsical and sweet. And oh my goodness, is this not the cutest edition of The Borrowers that you have ever seen? I just really, really thought this was a special edition, and I'm so excited to read it now. And I love how that book serendipity works, how you're just reading something, you're just intending to buy a special edition, and of course I found this one at the Book People. How great is that? And thanks to American Airlines, I got stuck in Austin for a few hours longer than I intended, so I used that time wisely and decided to visit the Ransom Center at the University of Texas. And you guys, it was another serendipitous moment because they had this amazing exhibit dedicated to one of my favorite authors, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I was just so excited to visit the Ransom Museum. It was a beautiful museum. They have, when you walk in, a Gutenberg Bible, and I am so impressed that the University of Texas has a Gutenberg Bible. I have only ever seen a Gutenberg at the British Library and the Library of Congress. So, you know, Texans, go big or go home. But this exhibit dedicated to Gabriel Garcia Marquez was absolutely stunning. It had a lot of his original manuscripts, like 100 Years of Solitude, like this book, Chronicle of a Death Foretold, and it just had beautiful photographs of him and his friends and his family, on all his travels, and then a lot of his personal papers. He was a newspaper reporter as well in Colombia, which I had never known, and so they had some of his original newspaper clippings. It was just a really fantastic exhibit, and I spent a good hour in there just browsing around. I had a fantastic time. My favorite exhibit there, of course, was the original manuscript for 100 Years of Solitude, which is one of my all-time favorite books. It's so stunning. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, if you're not familiar with his writing, he writes in what is known as magical realism. So a lot of the characters and the situations that he writes about just have this otherworldly quality. Add to the fact that he wrote these originally in Spanish and then they were translated into English for English speakers like myself, and it just adds a whole nother layer of magic and wonder to his writing. Very beautiful writing. And so when I saw the original manuscript of 100 Years of Solitude, I kind of had a religious experience because I love that book so much, and to see the original typewriter where he wrote 100 Years of Solitude and Chronicles of a Death Foretold, so much fun to see some of his handwritten notes. I loved it. But one of the things that surprised me the most was just how epic a life that Gabriel Garcia Marquez had, very similar to someone like Hemingway. But unlike Hemingway, it did seem like Gabriel Garcia Marquez lived it up and enjoyed his life and enjoyed his family and friends. So some of those poignant, candid shots with him and his family were my favorite. Just a wonderful writer and just a wonderful man who lived a good life, really. This, of course, is one of my favorite books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. I highly recommend it as just a first book to read if you're trying to get into him, especially for high schoolers. A lot of high schoolers read this book because it's a short novella. What I didn't realize when I bought this edition at the Ransom Center was that I bought a Spanish edition, and so that's fine. I think that's hilarious that I bought the Spanish edition. Chronicle of a Death Foretold is originally called in Spanish Crónica de una muerte anunciada. So I'm kind of glad that I bought this in Spanish. I mean, maybe someday I can read it in Spanish, but again, I always like to tuck some of the information into these books just to kind of remind me of my travels. Really enjoyed the Ransom Center. And if you are ever in Austin, really go check it out on the University of Texas's campus. It's a beautiful campus and it's a beautiful museum. Thank you everyone for joining me for my Austin, Texas book haul. Again, I had such a fantastic time that weekend at the Texas Book Festival. It was such a special time to just get back out in the community with people, discussing books, and Austin is a great city for that. Not only is it a good city for book people, but a great city for foodies and music lovers. I just had the best time, and everyone just felt so alive when I was there. Not only did I enjoy meeting Amor Towles and listening to his book discussion, the Lincoln Highway is amazing, by the way. I highly encourage everyone to pick it up. But I also enjoyed seeing that bookstore, The Book People. It is now one of my all-time favorite stores in America. I loved it. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.